In every war, there are stories too strange to tell out loud. The Clone Wars are no exception. While it might have ended on screen, the mysteries never did. From secret Jedi plots to hidden Sith agendas, fans have spun wild theories about what really happened during the galaxy's darkest war. Today, we're breaking down 20 of the biggest Clone Wars theories and deciding which ones actually hold weight and which ones belong in the trash compactor. We'll begin with our first theory, Sifo Dyas and the first lie. Sifo Dyas. His name drifts like a ghost in the archives, invoked only when the Jedi need to explain away an army they never ordered. Official records claim he foresaw a coming war, acted in haste, and commissioned the Kaminoans to create a clone army for the Republic. Yet the story never quite sits right. It is too clean, too convenient. He is credited, but not present. He is essential, but absent. And when we tug at the seams, the fabric unravels into something stranger. Was Sifo Dyas the first victim of the Clone Wars, or was his name simply stolen to cover the trail of darker architects? The Jedi Council themselves treat him as a cautionary tale. They describe him as impulsive, too ready to act on visions without consultation. That is the official spin. But when you remember how reluctant the Council usually is to trust foresight, the spin starts to sound more like a cover story than a sincere explanation. We are told he foresaw a great conflict. Did he? Or did Palpatine plant whispers into his dreams, guiding his visions until he believed he was choosing freely what the Sith had already designed? This possibility is chilling that foresight itself, the very tool of Jedi prophecy, can be weaponized by someone who knows how to nudge probability and perception. There is another possibility, that Dyas, in a rare act of independence, did indeed commission the army, only to be assassinated by Dooku almost immediately. His name becomes the perfect mask. The Kaminoans, distant from Coruscant politics, do not distinguish one Jedi from another. They have a name, a payment authorization, and genetic material from Jango Fett. To them, business is complete. If later another tall, caped figure arrives to modify the project, who are they to question it? Their clients are merely faces in the storm, while their laboratories hum on schedule. And what of Jango Fett? Officially, he is the prime template chosen by Sifo Dyas. But canon whispers reveal otherwise. Jango was recruited by Count Dooku directly under the alias Tyrannus. This cracks the narrative wide open. If Jango never even met Sifo Dyas, how could Dyas have been the commissioner? The entire project then shifts under our feet. Dooku not only oversees the clone army, but designs its foundation. He selects the genetic donor. He negotiates the modifications. He ensures the army will answer to a chain of command that ends in Palpatine's hand. It's almost comical when you think about it. The Jedi stand on Kamino, inspecting clone ranks, and seriously nodding to each other. Ah yes, Sifo Dyas must have done this. Really? Do they not notice the absence of Jango Fett's testimony, the silence of Dyas himself? The fact that one of their own has conveniently died just as the project matures. But perhaps they do notice, and perhaps that is the darker truth. Maybe the Council suspects the inconsistency, but decides not to press, because admitting the truth would unravel the Republic's ability to fight. Better to accept a mystery army than to confront the idea that someone else is already in control. We might ask, why Sifo Dyas specifically? Why not choose the name of a more respected Jedi, one whose reputation would easily shield the deception? Maybe it is because Dyas was expendable, a Jedi of no great renown, already considered unstable for his reliance on visions, made the perfect scapegoat. When he disappears, Few ask questions. His credibility is shaky enough that if the story leaks, it remains believable. Yes. He would have acted alone against the Council's wishes. It's tragic, but plausible. In that way, Dyas is weaponized twice, once as a dead man who cannot protest, and again as a flawed man whose flaws cover the Sith's design. From a narrative perspective, Dyas is the ultimate red herring. He exists to distract, to misdirect, to give the Jedi just enough explanation that they stop digging deeper. And that is precisely how Palpatine operates. He never lies outright when half-truths will do. He lets the Jedi build their own comforting story, one that conveniently hides his hand. That is the true brilliance of the Sifo Dyas mystery. It is not about who placed the order, but about how the Jedi respond to the question. Their acceptance is the greater failure. Imagine, just for a moment, an alternate timeline where the Jedi reject the clones outright. They declare them a violation of life, a manipulation too suspicious to trust. The Senate, furious, seeks new generals. The Jedi step back from the war. What happens then? Perhaps Palpatine still rises, but his path is slower, less clean. Without Jedi leadership, maybe the Republic fragments differently, and Anakin's fate is not sealed so neatly. This counterfactual reminds us the Jedi had agency, but they surrendered it by choosing the story most convenient to survival. The Sifo Dyas affair becomes the war's first great lie. Not shouted, not obvious, but whispered. A name on a file. A body left behind. A contract sealed on a rainy world. It is the seed of mistrust, planted so deep that by the time the tree blooms, it is too late to cut it down. And as the Republic grows more dependent on its clone legions, the question of who truly owns them fades into the background. Dyas, in death, becomes the silent architect of a deception far larger than himself. So when the Kaminoans tell Obi-Wan Kenobi that Master Sifo Dyas placed the order, what we are hearing is not history, it is myth carefully arranged. Whether Dyas foresaw, or acted rashly, or was murdered, the conclusion remains the same. He is a mask. The war is already marching to a rhythm set by someone else, and his name is just the first drumbit. And doesn't it sting a little, knowing that the Jedi, guardians of truth, allow the first great truth of the war to slip unchallenged? They stand on Kamino's platforms, drenched in rain, and nod, as though the ghost of Sifo Dyas has answered their questions, as though they are not already prisoners of a story they do not control. Kaminoan ethics and hidden agendas. We often picture the Kaminoans as passive tools, unaware of the galaxy's deeper politics. But what if that's only half the story? Consider the possibility that Lama Su and Nala Se are not knave at all. Perhaps they know perfectly well that their client is not the Jedi Council, but someone operating in shadows. Yet they choose not to care. Profit and pride outweigh morality. Their art is the creation of soldiers, and they are flattered when their skills are tested on such a scale. If war is the Republic's future, then Kamino ensures it will be fought with Kaminoan craftsmanship. Let us pause and think about that. Soldiers designed not by Jedi philosophy or Republic law, but by a client relationship. Troopers grown like harvests, calibrated like instruments. The Kaminoans make design choices as if tweaking a product line. Loyalty enhanced, aggression balanced, aging accelerated. The goal is a soldier who will obey without hesitation, fight without pause, and never live long enough to question his place in the galaxy. And yet, here's the irony, the very act of cloning creates the opposite of what they intend. Because individuality is stubborn, even identical faces find ways to grow apart. The ethics here are almost unbearable when you linger on them. The clones are not droids. They breathe, they feel, they dream. They are born not for choice, but for war. And the Kaminoans present this with the calm detachment of a merchant displaying fine wares. Isn't it strange how quickly the Jedi adapt to this? The order that values life and connection walks among growing chambers filled with silent children and raises no objection. Perhaps they rationalize the war demands this. Perhaps they tell themselves that clones are bred for this fate and therefore cannot be victims of it. But deep down, do they not sense the contradiction? And here speculation claws at us again. Did the Kaminoans receive more than one client? Was it truly Sifo Dyas alone, or did Dooku arrive later with new instructions, subtle alterations in neural development, hidden implants, inhibitor chips? If so, then the Kaminoans are not innocent. They accepted revisions from one client to another with no hesitation. A Jedi, a Sith, what difference does it make? Payment clears. Projects proceed. That is their ethic. We might even ask, did the Kaminoans suspect the purpose of these mysterious modifications? They are not fools. If someone orders a genetic army and asks for behavioral safeguards, surely the scientists know what such requests imply. Yet notice how little they inquire into motive. They believe in the perfection of their product. If the client wants absolute obedience, the Kaminoans supply it. If the client requests biological control switches, the Kaminoans oblige. Their neutrality is not ignorance, it is willful detachment, a moral outsourcing. But neutrality is not the same as innocence. Imagine walking through Tipoca City's endless white corridors, hearing the rain hammer against the domes, seeing rows of children learning synchronized drills. Every element is polished, serene, efficient. And yet beneath the calm surface, a moral abyss yawns open. For what is this, if not slavery wrapped in medical jargon? The Kaminoans speak of units and specimens, never of sons or brothers. They do not even use the word people. And still, the Jedi allow themselves to be convinced. They adopt the Kaminoan vocabulary. They call them troopers, assets, reinforcements. It is the language of acceptance. Let's probe deeper. Why Jango Fett? Why choose a bounty hunter of Mandalorian heritage, a man with no loyalty to the Republic, as the prime template? Perhaps the Kaminoans valued his combat efficiency. Or perhaps Dooku knew precisely what he was doing, ensuring the clones would inherit not just physical skill, but a cultural streak of independence that might one day fracture the design. Is it possible the Kaminoans noticed this risk and ignored it? Or did they simply enjoy the challenge of perfecting even such a volatile template? What is fascinating is how the Kaminoans treat the clones who step outside expectation. Take the Bad Batch, genetic variants dismissed as defective. To Kamino, their differences are flaws. To us, they are individuality asserting itself. Here lies the paradox. The more the Kaminoans strive for uniformity, the more the Force itself seems to resist, producing troopers who think differently, feel more sharply, disobey orders. Does this suggest that personhood cannot be engineered out, no matter how sterile the lab? From a narrative perspective, Kaminoan detachment provides the perfect soil for Sith manipulation. Palpatine needs only to exploit their indifference. A client requests an inhibitor chip. Very well. A client insists on secrecy. Standard procedure. The Kaminoans shrug, invoice delivered, project completed. And thus, without malice, they become architects of catastrophe. Their ethics are not evil, they are absent. So we must ask, were the Kaminoans complicit or merely convenient? The answer may be both. They are not Sith, not warriors, not ideologues. They are professionals. But professionalism without morality is the perfect mask for atrocity. To them, the storm outside is just weather. To us, it is a metaphor, because under endless rain truth blurs, and on Kamino, blurred truth is a way of life. When Obi-Wan departs Kamino, watching clone children spar under sterile lights, he does not stop to accuse the Kaminoans. He does not dismantle their labs. He accepts. And in that acceptance, the Republic binds itself to a people who never once ask whether the war they are fueling is just. The Kaminoans will one day be swept aside by their own clients, erased when they are no longer useful. Yet their legacy endures in every trooper's scar, in every order barked without question, in every Jedi who chose not to ask too many questions, ethics surrendered to efficiency, morality outsourced to biology, and all of it delivered with calm, unblinking eyes. Inhibitor chips, design, or destiny. Every clone carries a secret. Not in their memories, not in their training manuals, but nestled within the very architecture of their brains. Small, organic slivers, unremarkable at first glance, yet designed to override the most fundamental instinct of sentient life choice. These are the inhibitor chips, tiny time bombs planted by design, waiting for a single phrase to activate them. Order 66. The Kaminoans explain them clinically. Safeguards, they say. Protections against unexpected independence. After all, an army of millions cannot be trusted without fail. What if a soldier disobeys? What if a battalion refuses to march? The chip ensures uniformity, eliminates the risk of rebellion, preserves efficiency. That is the surface explanation, neat and sterile. But look closer, and the design is far too specific. These implants are not general safety measures. They are precision-engineered keys for a lock only Palpatine holds. Here's the irony: the clones themselves sometimes feel the chips. Nightmares, splitting headaches, flashes of anger they cannot explain. Fives, in particular, tears at this thread until it unravels, exposing the entire conspiracy, only to be silenced before he can speak. His struggle demonstrates the sinister genius of the plan. The chips are not flawless. They leak, they whisper. But the galaxy is not prepared to listen to a soldier's doubts. The clones were engineered to obey, and so when one of them questions the design, he is dismissed as malfunctioning, unstable, dangerous. Consider the horror of it. The Jedi fight side by side with soldiers whose skulls carry the instruments of their own execution. Every campfire conversation, every shared victory, every brotherhood forged in battle, all of it sits on a countdown none of them know is ticking. It is tragedy disguised as camaraderie. How many times did a Jedi kneel beside a dying trooper, comforted by the bond they believed was real, while unknowingly sharing space with a man programmed to one day kill them? Speculation offers multiple layers here. One theory suggests that the chips were originally designed as genuine safeguards, a Kaminoan innovation to guarantee client satisfaction, only later corrupted by Dooku's interference. Another theory posits that the chips were Sith instructions from the very beginning, woven into the contract so subtly that the Kaminoans themselves never asked what contingency protocols actually meant. And then there is the most disturbing possibility, that the Kaminoans knew exactly what the chips would do, but chose to remain indifferent. After all, their allegiance was to the product, not to the ethics of its deployment. Let us ask a blunt question. If the clones had no chips, would they still have turned? The Sith plan depends on certainty, on total obedience, at the exact moment of execution. Without the chips, Palpatine would have been gambling. Some battalions might obey out of loyalty to the Republic, others might hesitate, and still others might flatly refuse to fire on Jedi generals who had become family. Without the chip, Order 66 becomes chaos. A fractured order, not a synchronized purge. The Jedi might have survived in larger numbers. The Empire might never have consolidated so smoothly. Which means the inhibitor chip is not just a tool, it is the keystone of the entire Clone Wars narrative. Think about Fives again. His discovery is a pivot point where the future could have shifted. He uncovers the implant, links it to Tup's sudden execution of Jedi Tiplar, and brings the truth inches from the Council. But bureaucracy and paranoia close in around him. He is branded unstable, hunted, killed. His story dies with him, buried under paperwork. Isn't it bitterly ironic that the clones' one chance at autonomy, their proof of being more than tools, becomes the very reason Fives is erased? The chip ensures obedience, but suspicion ensures silence. Together, they lock the clones in cages they cannot see. Now consider the psychological dimension. Even when the chip is dormant, it shapes clone identity. Subconsciously, perhaps they feel a pressure to obey, a subtle tug steering them toward conformity. Their very sense of self is compromised before it fully forms. Yet despite this, individuality bursts through. Troopers paint their armor, invent nicknames, form attachments, express doubts. The chip cannot extinguish that spark, but it can exploit it. When the moment comes, when Order 66 is given, the chip hijacks loyalty itself. The very bonds forged with Jedi commanders are twisted into justification for murder. They are told their generals have betrayed the Republic, and the clones, conditioned to obey, engineered to trust the system, execute the command as though it were the ultimate act of loyalty. That is the cruelest twist the chip makes betrayal feel like devotion. Philosophically, the inhibitor chip forces us to confront the meaning of free will. If every clone has a kill switch in his head, do his choices still belong to him? Or does the presence of such programming invalidate his agency entirely? The Jedi treat clones as soldiers, the Kaminoans treat them as property, and the Sith treat them as weapons. But when Rex rips his chip out, when Fives fights against his programming, when others hesitate in the split second between order and execution, we glimpse a truth the Sith cannot fully suppress or autonomy resists, even when engineered against it. And here's a question for us: what does it say about the Republic that no one, not the Senate, not the Jedi, ever conducted an independent inspection of the Army's biology? They scrutinize contracts, debate budgets, bicker endlessly over procedure, and yet never once check the brains of the men who will decide the war's outcome. It's as though they believe morality is a luxury item that can be backordered. In the end, the inhibitor chips are not merely devices. They are the war itself, crystallized in organic circuitry. The Republic believes it commands the clones, but the clones are already commanded by someone else. Palpatine holds not just their loyalty, but their very neurons. And the Jedi, so wise, so foresighted, march shoulder to shoulder with soldiers who are, quite literally, carrying their doom inside their skulls. When the moment comes, the chips activate. Lightsabers fall silent. Blasters blaze. Brotherhood dissolves in an instant. And somewhere, in the hollow silence after the massacre, the question lingers: were the clones ever given a choice, or was the choice stolen from them long before the first shot of the war was fired? Palpatine's grand clockwork. Palpatine does not rush. That is the first thing we must understand about him. He waits, he watches, and he arranges. Every vote in the Senate, every skirmish on the battlefield, every headline in the holonews, he counts them as pieces in a clock he alone knows how to wind. The Republic does not fall in one sweeping strike. It ticks downward, beat by beat, until the galaxy awakens one day to find there is no republic left, only an empire whose flag requires no announcement because its rhythm already controls every heart. From the very beginning, his hand is steady on the gears. The Trade Federation blockade of Naboo. A test, a small rehearsal for how far fear and bureaucracy can be pushed before collapsing. The Separatist movement. A tool. Dooku rallies systems with legitimate grievances, but every voice of dissent plays into Palpatine's symphony. He engineers the problem and presents himself as the solution. It is the same strategy he uses on Anakin, only scaled to a galactic stage. Notice how he never appears to overreach. As Chancellor, he does not demand absolute power all at once. He requests emergency measures, limited, temporary, necessary. Each request feels minor. Each expansion of authority is cloaked in the language of duty. Senators who hesitate are accused of weakness, of undermining the Republic during crisis. And so, vote by vote, the Senate hands him everything he wants. By the time anyone realizes what they have given away, it is too late. The clock has already struck midnight. We might laugh, in a dark way, at how clean his strategy is. The Jedi, supposedly the wisest minds in the galaxy, are played as easily as the senators. He knows their weakness, they are rigid. When war begins, they step into the role assigned to them without protest. They become generals. They accept their clone armies. They lead campaigns. Palpatine doesn't need to force them into hypocrisy. He simply creates circumstances where hypocrisy feels like responsibility. And once the Jedi are generals, they cannot return to being monks. The trap is sprung, not by compulsion, but by convenience. Think of the war itself as a clock face. On one hand, Palpatine controls the Republic and its clone legions. On the other, he controls the Separatists through Dooku and his corporate backers. Both hands move in perfect sync, circling toward the same point: exhaustion. The Republic spends credits it does not have, burning through loans from the banking clan. The Separatists stretch their droid factories to breaking. Both sides bleed, and when both are drained, Palpatine alone has the reserve to step in as savior. It is not victory he seeks, it is dependency. Consider how he manipulates crises. A Republic victory is never too decisive. A Separatist strike is never too crippling. He calibrates. When the Jedi press too hard, he ensures Dooku slips away. When the Separatists threaten to overwhelm, he quietly releases reinforcements at just the right moment. This is not war in the natural sense. It is choreography. Every death, every evacuation, every desperate plea in the Senate, Palpatine already accounted for it. The galaxy believes it is witnessing chaos, but in truth it is watching a performance. And oh, how the senators dance! Bail Organa speaks of liberty. Padme Amidala warns against militarization. Mon Mothma protests emergency powers, but their voices are drowned out by the roar of fear. Every bombing, every assassination attempt, every separatist strike reinforces Palpatine's case: the Republic cannot afford hesitation. And so the Senate, supposedly the voice of the people, becomes an echo chamber for one man's script. Isn't it funny, in a bitter way, how democracy applauds while it votes itself into chains? Let us speculate for a moment. What if Palpatine had miscalculated? What if, early in the war, Dooku had been captured, or Grievous killed too soon? Would his clockwork have stalled? Perhaps, but this is where his genius lies, not in predicting the future, but in creating redundancies. Every possible setback already has a counterweight. If Dooku falls, another Sith apprentice can step in. If a Separatist fleet is destroyed, another factory is ready. Palpatine does not need perfection, only momentum. The Jedi, meanwhile, slowly realize something is wrong. They sense the dark side clouding everything, but they cannot pinpoint its source. That is by design. Palpatine ensures his presence feels benign. He smiles, offers condolences, pretends humility. He speaks softly while the war screams. And the Jedi, unable to act on instinct alone, demand evidence. Evidence that never appears. Thus they are trapped, not by chains, but by their own discipline. They cannot move against him until it is already too late. The tragedy of Palpatine's clockwork is not just that it works, it is that it works so smoothly the galaxy mistakes it for natural rhythm. Senators believe the war is a storm beyond anyone's control. Jedi believe the dark side is simply clouding their vision. Citizens believe they are caught in a tide too vast to resist. No one sees the metronome ticking beneath it all, counting down to the exact moment when the Republic dissolves with a single vote of acclamation. And here is the cruelest irony. Palpatine does not hide his intentions. He says openly that peace requires strength, that security demands sacrifice. He tells the Senate precisely what he will do. But because he delivers it in increments, wrapped in necessity, no one resists until the clock strikes final. By then, resistance is no longer possible. The galaxy has already applauded its own execution. We often imagine conquest as thunder loud, dramatic, unmistakable. But Palpatine conquers with a whisper. His victory is not sudden, but incremental. And that is why it endures. So when we speak of his grand clockwork, we are not being poetic. We are describing the precise mechanism of tyranny disguised as governance. A device wound carefully, tick by tick, until the Jedi are generals, the Senate is voiceless, and the Republic itself has become nothing more than the casing for a Sith-designed machine. And when the final chime rings, Order 66, it will not sound like surprise. It will sound like inevitability. Dooku between masks. Count Dooku strides across the galactic stage draped in elegance, his cape flowing like a banner of authority, his voice rich with conviction. To most, he is a separatist warlord, the aristocrat turned traitor. To Palpatine, he is an apprentice, useful, disposable, and utterly deceived. And to us, he is the tragic middleman of the Clone Wars, caught between two masks he can never fully remove. Dooku once sat in the Jedi Council chamber, frustrated by the corruption he saw festering in the Senate and by the Council's unwillingness to confront it. That part of him is real. The idealist who saw the Republic sliding into decay, who wanted something better. But the Sith never waste an idealist. They recruit him, twist his passion into weaponry, and convince him that control is the only cure. And so Dooku walks the shadow path, convinced he can reform the galaxy by becoming its manipulator. Here's the first irony: Dooku believes he is in charge. He rallies systems, builds an army, intimidates senators, and negotiates with corporations. He carries himself as though he is the architect of secession. But in truth, every move he makes strengthens Palpatine. The Separatists are not a rebellion, they are scaffolding. Their victories fuel emergency powers for the Chancellor. Their defeats tighten dependence on clones. Every strike Dooku orders accelerates the very machinery that will erase him. And yet, this is what makes him fascinating. Dooku is not blind. He suspects Palpatine is playing a larger game. At times, he even plots against him. He recruits Ventress, Savage Opress, Maul, apprentices he hopes might one day help him overthrow his master. He knows the rule of two guarantees betrayal. He plans to betray first. But here lies the tragedy: he is always one revelation behind. By the time he realizes Palpatine has already chosen Anakin as his true successor, Dooku is kneeling on the floor of the invisible hand, betrayed not just by his master, but by the very idea that he was essential. Speculation paints Dooku as more than just pawn. Some theories argue he hoped to restore order by ending both the Jedi and Sith in one grand coup, that his schemes to build a new galactic system were genuine. Others imagine he knew exactly what Palpatine was planning, but believed he could outwit him. Picture the arrogance required to think you can outmaneuver the Sith Lord who engineered the war itself. But then again, arrogance is Dooku's defining feature. It blinds him to the inevitability of his role, not architect, not reformer, but sacrificial placeholder. Notice how Dooku frames the war when he speaks to others. To the Separatists, he presents himself as their champion. To the Jedi, he presents himself as reluctant enemy, hinting that they could join him to stop Sidious. Even to Obi-Wan, chained and defiant, Dooku says, "What if I told you the Republic is under the control of a Dark Lord of the Sith?" He tells the truth, but in such a way that it sounds like deception. Isn't that deliciously cruel? He reveals the entire plot, but no one believes him because his own duplicity has made him untrustworthy. Let us imagine, for a moment, that Obi-Wan had believed him. Suppose Kenobi reported to the Council that Dooku's claims were true, that the Chancellor was Sidious. Would the Jedi have acted? Maybe not. They would likely demand proof, which Dooku could not provide. But even if they did act, could they move quickly enough? Palpatine's power in the Senate was already too strong, and so Dooku's honesty becomes useless, his half-confession absorbed into the noise of war. In many ways, Dooku is the perfect Sith apprentice for Palpatine. He brings legitimacy. He is a nobleman, a former Jedi, a statesman. His defection scandalizes the Order, fractures trust in the Senate, and convinces countless systems that corruption must indeed be intolerable if even a Jedi master abandons ship. Palpatine exploits this perfectly. See, even a Jedi agrees the Republic is broken. We must act decisively. Thus, Dooku's personal rebellion becomes propaganda for the very tyranny he thinks he is resisting. But here is the knife twist. Dooku is not merely deceived by Palpatine. He is deceived by himself. He clings to the belief that he is a reformer, a savior, a visionary. Yet every act of reform he attempts only deepens the galaxy's suffering. He engineers war to end corruption. He spreads fear to bring order. He trains assassins to protect peace. In every move, he becomes the very corruption he claimed to fight. If Palpatine is the master clockmaker, Dooku is the second hand moving visibly, drawing attention, yet powerless to alter the mechanism. Consider his end. On the invisible hand, captured before Anakin and Obi-Wan, he kneels at Palpatine's side. The Chancellor whispers, "Kill him." Dooku looks up, realization dawning. In that instant, everything becomes clear. He was never the heir. He was never the partner. He was always the placeholder, the stepping stone. And as Anakin's blades cross, Dooku's story collapses into silence. Palpatine does not even blink. We might ask, what if Dooku had lived? Could he have broken free, revealed the truth, turned the tide? Unlikely. By then, Palpatine's machine was too far wounded. But imagining Dooku's survival forces us to consider the greater tragedy of his role. He was not necessary. Anyone could have filled his place. Dooku's brilliance, his aristocracy, his eloquence, none of it mattered. Palpatine required only a mask, and Dooku wore it until it cracked. So Dooku becomes the cautionary tale of the Clone Wars. The man who thought he was shaping destiny, but was only decorating someone else's scheme. He believed he could reform by controlling. He believed betrayal could be mastered. He believed knowledge equaled power, and in the end, all of it collapses under the simplest truth: the Sith always eat their own, and the apprentice who thinks he will escape is only proving the cycle works. Jedi blindness as strategy. We must remember what the Jedi are. They are monks trained in detachment, philosophers wielding blades, protectors sworn to defend the innocent. For centuries, they have insisted they are not soldiers. They solve disputes, mediate, intervene only when necessary. But when the clone army is presented, they do not argue. They do not refuse. They step forward as generals, as though war is simply another branch of diplomacy. It is the most devastating compromise in their history, and it is one they embrace willingly. Why? Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of irrelevance. The Republic is fracturing. Senators squabble, planets secede, corporations amass private armies. If the Jedi refuse to lead, what role do they play in the crisis? They risk becoming obsolete, a ceremonial order while the galaxy burns. And so they rationalize: if we command these clones, at least the Republic fights under the guidance of wisdom. If not us, then who? This reasoning seems noble, but underneath, it is fear disguised as responsibility. And once the Jedi accept command, they are trapped. Their temples become war rooms, their knights become officers, their apprentices become lieutenants. What begins as emergency action quickly becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. By the midpoint of the war, Jedi are no longer peacekeepers. They are warriors, strategists, commanders. They sit at tactical briefings, discuss supply chains, debate casualty reports. The Force is still their ally, but bureaucracy becomes their master. This blindness is not accidental. Palpatine designs it. By embedding the Jedi into military command, he ensures they are too busy fighting battles to notice the war's architecture. Consider Yoda, once the quiet teacher of younglings. Now he is coordinating fleets, studying intelligence reports, even justifying collateral damage. Think of Mace Windu, once a philosopher of balance. Now he lectures about winning campaigns. Even Obi-Wan, with his wit and wisdom, becomes defined by titles General Kenobi. These men of spirit are being slowly ground into cogs of war, and none of them step back to see it happening. The blindness runs deeper. Every Jedi leads clones who call them Sir. Every Jedi watches soldiers obey without hesitation. It should unsettle them. It should provoke questions. Instead, they accept it as natural. Do they not notice how strange it is that millions of men exist only to serve them? Do they not feel the contradiction of preaching peace while commanding legions of engineered warriors? Perhaps they do in fleeting moments, but the war pushes too quickly for reflection, and so their doubt dissolves into orders. Speculation here grows sharp. Did the Jedi subconsciously sense the trap but choose to ignore it? Perhaps they felt the creeping suspicion that the war itself was a design. But to admit it would require rejecting the Republic, and that was unthinkable. Their loyalty became their leash. They trusted the Senate. Even as the Senate became Palpatine, they trusted the Republic even as the Republic decayed into empire. Their blindness was not ignorance, it was obedience. Notice how Palpatine plays the Jedi against public opinion. The Senate cheers their victories, but also fears their power. Propaganda whispers that the Jedi are too secretive, too controlling, too distant from the people they claim to serve. Palpatine feeds this suspicion carefully, planting seeds of doubt while ensuring the Jedi continue to command armies. Thus, by the time he accuses them of treason, the galaxy is prepared to believe it. After all, aren't the Jedi generals now? Aren't they military leaders with too much influence? The very role they accepted becomes the justification for their destruction. There is a tragic irony in how often Jedi sense the dark side without naming it. Yoda meditates, frowns, mutters that the Force is clouded. Windu scowls, says they must keep watch. They know something is wrong, but they cannot bring themselves to suspect the Chancellor. Why? Because to do so would mean acknowledging their complicity. If Palpatine is the architect, then their participation in the war makes them his accomplices, and that is too heavy a truth to face. So instead, they blind themselves with platitudes about patience, destiny, the will of the Force. Think about it. The Jedi survive by questioning attachment, by warning against emotions, by urging calm. But during the Clone Wars, those very teachings paralyze them. They wait for certainty before acting, while certainty never comes. Meanwhile, Palpatine moves without hesitation, shaping reality faster than they can debate it. Their blindness is not a failure of perception, it is a failure of speed. They are always behind, because their philosophy requires them to pause while Palpatine's requires him to strike. And perhaps the most heartbreaking blindness of all, their inability to see the clones as more than soldiers. Yes, individuals like Obi-Wan or Anakin develop bonds with troopers. Yes, commanders like Rex and Cody prove themselves as more than rank and file. But institutionally, the Jedi never questioned the morality of leading men bred for war. They never demand the Senate discuss the ethics of it. They accept the clones as a gift, and in doing so, they accept their own assassins into their closest circles. Blindness has never been so literal. So when the Jedi fall, cut down by their own troops, the galaxy calls it betrayal. But perhaps it was something else. Inevitability. For blindness is not merely failing to see, it is refusing to look. And throughout the Clone Wars, the Jedi refuse to look too closely at the truth. They cannot, because the truth would shatter the illusion that they are still guardians of peace. The Sith do not blind the Jedi. The Jedi blind themselves. Ahsoka the Unchosen. Ahsoka Tano is never meant to be the chosen one, yet she hovers like a shadow at the edge of that prophecy. She is the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, his mirror and his counterbalance, and while Anakin carries the unbearable burden of destiny, Ahsoka carries the equally cruel weight of exclusion. She is chosen by Anakin, but not by the Force itself, or so the Council would claim. But what if the story is not so simple? What if the Unchosen is the one who sees clearest? From her first days under Anakin, Ahsoka reflects a different path, quick-witted, defiant, unafraid to speak truth to power. She laughs at rank, challenges authority, and forges bonds with clones that are more genuine than the Council's stiff partnerships. She sees them not as pawns, but as brothers. Already this separates her from the Jedi orthodoxy, who treat the clones as necessary tools. Here lies the seed of a counter-prophecy. While the Chosen One is blinded by visions and attachments, the Unchosen One perceives what the Order cannot. We speculate, what would the galaxy look like if Ahsoka had been trained differently or elevated sooner? She senses deception around the Jedi far earlier than Anakin. She sees the cracks in their supposed wisdom. When she is falsely accused of treason and expelled, it is not just her exile, it is a trial for the entire Order. One, they fail. They choose bureaucracy over trust, image over truth. And so, the Unchosen walks away, her departure echoing like a prophecy inverted. The Jedi's downfall will not come solely from Sith manipulation, but from their inability to keep their own family. The irony is sharp. The Order fears attachments, but they lose Ahsoka precisely because they cannot attach to her in trust. They suspect her, doubt her, push her out when she needs them most, and in leaving, she becomes free from the shadow of Order 66. The clones, engineered executioners of Jedi, cannot kill what is no longer a Jedi. Was this accident, or was the Force speaking through the cracks of the prophecy? Ahsoka's story forces us to ask, was the prophecy wrong, or simply incomplete? Perhaps the Chosen One was never meant to be one figure, but two, lightning split between master and apprentice. Anakin, the one who will fall, and Ahsoka, the one who will endure. One bound by fate, the other liberated by exile. If we take this further, perhaps the Chosen One's true role was not to destroy the Sith, but to create the conditions in which the Unchosen could survive to rebuild. There is a haunting symmetry here. When Anakin becomes Vader, enslaved to Palpatine, Ahsoka becomes the freest of all Force sensitives, no council, no senate, no prophecy, no master. She fights not for destiny, but for choice. And choice, in a galaxy enslaved by schemes, is the rarest rebellion. Speculative whispers suggest that in another timeline, if the Council had embraced her, Ahsoka might have tempered Anakin's rage, redirected his doubt, even prevented his fall. But by rejecting her, the Jedi give Anakin one more reason to mistrust them. He sees their failure to support his apprentice, and he folds that grievance into his growing bitterness. Thus, Ahsoka's expulsion may be one of the hidden dominoes that topple the Order. But beyond blame, Ahsoka's significance lies in her survival. When the war ends in betrayal, she is the proof that prophecy cannot dictate every fate. She carries forward the lessons of the clones, the failures of the Jedi, and the shadow of her master's transformation. And so we call her the Unchosen, but perhaps that is her power. She is not burdened by the expectations of destiny, and therefore she becomes something greater than destiny, a free agent in a galaxy of puppets. Maul's anti-prophecy. Maul is the ghost that should not exist. Cut in half, cast into a garbage pit, left as nothing more than a memory in Obi-Wan's mind, he should have ended there. But he doesn't. And in surviving, Maul becomes the greatest refutation of prophecy. He is not the Chosen One, not the Sith savior, not the Republic's pawn. He is the mistake the galaxy refuses to account for. His entire existence is an anti-prophecy, the proof that destiny is not neat, not written, not inevitable. When he crawls from the shadows of Lotho Minor, broken body wrapped in junk, sanity shattered, he is not meant to matter. Yet his rage sustains him. Rage is not destiny, it is spite, the will to scream against fate itself. Maul embodies the possibility that survival is not heroic or ordained, but simply the refusal to die when death would make more sense. He has no prophecy to cling to, no chosen role to justify him, and that is precisely what makes him dangerous. Think of what he sees. He watches Sidious discard him, just as Sidious discards everything, apprentices, pawns, allies. He realizes the prophecy of the Chosen One is a Jedi weakness, a fixation on meaning, while the Sith know better. Nothing has meaning except power. But Maul twists even this lesson. He becomes neither Sith nor Jedi. He becomes hunger embodied. He wants revenge, but more than that, he wants to prove the lie of prophecy itself. On Mandalore, he declares that the Chosen One is false, that Anakin Skywalker is nothing but another puppet in Sidious's play. His vision is not clouded. He sees what the Jedi cannot. That Skywalker is being shaped as the perfect apprentice for the Dark Lord. He begs Ahsoka to join him to stop Anakin before it's too late. And we, as the whisperers of speculation, must pause, was Maul right? Imagine if Ahsoka had listened. Imagine if Maul and Ahsoka, the Unchosen and the Unwanted, had joined forces. Could they have changed the course of history? It is not far-fetched to think that together they might have exposed Sidious, or at least shattered his plan. Instead, Ahsoka rejects him, unwilling to accept alliance with a monster. Morality blinds her to the possibility that sometimes monsters see more clearly than prophets. And yet, Maul's anti-prophecy is not salvation, it is irony. He predicts Skywalker's fall with eerie precision, yet he can do nothing to stop it. He is right and powerless, the prophet of futility. Perhaps that is why his story resonates, because being right without the power to act is its own form of damnation. Consider his final act on Tatooine. Older, scarred, still obsessed with Kenobi, he confronts his nemesis in the desert. He has no grand destiny to fulfill, no Sith Empire to build. Just one last duel. Obi-Wan cuts him down with mercy, and Maul dies asking if the boy, Luke, is the chosen one. Even in death, he circles the prophecy he hates, tethered to it like a moth to flame. But perhaps the tragedy is not that Maul dies. Perhaps the tragedy is that he understood the prophecy better than either Jedi or Sith, and still could not escape it. So Maul stands as the anti-chosen, the anti-prophet. He is proof that the Force does not always align with neat predictions, that survival itself can be a rebellion against destiny. He is a jagged crack across the smooth marble of prophecy. And in that fracture, we glimpse a truth the Jedi and Sith alike would rather ignore. The Force does not care about prophecy. It simply is Mandalore's quiet earthquake. Mandalore does not roar when it shakes, it whispers. The planet, once the forge of warriors feared across the galaxy, hides its scars beneath politics and neutral declarations. But beneath the surface lies a pressure building, the kind of tremor that doesn't destroy cities instantly but cracks their foundations until collapse is inevitable. Mandalore's quiet earthquake is not seismic but ideological, a war within itself about what it means to be Mandalorian. At the center of this conflict is Duchess Satine Kryze, a pacifist leading a people descended from conquerors. Her new Mandalorians enforce neutrality, renouncing war in a galaxy where war is the only language spoken. It is a noble vision, but speculation demands we ask, is neutrality strength, or is it simply waiting to be conquered? Satine insists Mandalore must choose peace, but her enemies understand that peace in the Clone Wars is an illusion. The Death Watch, hungry for the old ways, see her pacifism as weakness, and Palpatine, ever the opportunist, sees Mandalore as a pawn in a game larger than the Duchess can fathom. The irony is suffocating Satine wants Mandalore to stand apart, yet her people's refusal to fight ensures they will become a battlefield. Neutrality makes them a target, not a sanctuary, and when Maul seizes power, installing himself as Mandalore's hidden ruler through the blade of the Darksaber, the quake becomes visible. The crack Satine tried to mend with diplomacy split open into chaos. Mandalore's greatest danger is not outside invaders, but its own fractured soul. Speculation deepens when we consider Obi-Wan Kenobi's role. He loves Satine, quietly, dutifully, in the way Jedi are not supposed to love. If the Order had allowed attachment, if Obi-Wan had chosen differently, would Mandalore's story be different? Perhaps he might have stood at Satine's side, solidifying her rule, preventing the Death Watch's rise. Instead, Jedi detachment once again creates a vacuum, and that vacuum is filled by violence. Mandalore's earthquake also reverberates through its cultural identity. The Darksaber, ancient weapon of Tar Vizsla, is more than a blade. It is Mandalore's prophecy, its symbol of leadership. Whoever wields it is believed to hold the right to rule. Yet, in Maul's hands, it becomes a contradiction, an outsider, an ex-Sith wielding Mandalorian destiny like a stolen relic. Some follow him, others resist. But all are forced to reckon with the uncomfortable truth: is leadership truly about blood and creed, or is it just about who can win the duel? This raises a deeper speculation. If Mandalorians define power through combat, are they doomed to repeat endless cycles of conquest and rebellion? Satine tried to break the cycle, but her attempt ended in assassination. Bo-Katan tried to reclaim tradition, yet even she would struggle with legitimacy. In truth, Mandalore's earthquake is not just one political upheaval, it is a recurring aftershock through centuries. A culture caught between peace and war, honor and survival, unity and fracturing. We must note, too, how Palpatine manipulates Mandalore's quake. He allows Maul to play king until it threatens his designs, then crushes him personally, reminding everyone who truly controls the galaxy. Mandalore is not strategic to him in resources or ships, it is symbolic. It proves no world is outside his influence. Neutrality is an illusion. Independence is a lie. And so Mandalore's fate becomes one of the galaxy's deepest tragedies. A people of warriors reduced to pawns, a duchess slain for her vision, a culture divided by its own myths. The quake never stops, it simply quiets, waiting for the next eruption. And when it does, generations later, Mandalore will be ground zero once again. Nightsisters and unnatural selection. The Nightsisters of Dathomir are not bound by prophecy, council, or senate. They are bound by something far older, something the Jedi and Sith prefer to ignore. Primal force magic. To the galaxy, they are witches. To themselves, they are survivors in a world that has chosen them for extinction more than once. Their story is not one of destiny, but of unnatural selection, a grim evolution where only cunning and sorcery preserve their kind. On Dathomir, the Force takes a different shape. It is not the light or the dark, but mist, ichor, and spell. Mother Talzin wields it not as doctrine but as craft, brewing, binding, resurrecting. This challenges the rigid binaries of Jedi and Sith. Is the Force really only two-sided? Or is that just the story told by two rival cults who want to claim ownership? The Nightsisters stand as evidence that the Force is far wilder, less civilized, more unpredictable than any prophecy would admit. Consider how Talzin's clan thrives. They don't train armies. They don't hoard fleets. They manipulate the battlefield itself, assassins cloaked in shadow, warriors enhanced by spell work. Corpses raised to fight again. It is survival through subversion, unnatural selection at its purest. Those who underestimate them often end up dead, confused at the rules of combat rewritten under Dathomir's crimson sky. And yet, the Nightsisters are not invincible. When General Grievous and Dooku launch their assault, their magic bends but cannot break the sheer machinery of the Separatists. The massacre of Dathomir is chilling because it proves that even evolution has its limits. No amount of spells can stop orbital bombardment. Still, their annihilation feels less like military strategy and more like nature's revenge, an ecosystem refusing to allow predators that strong to persist. Was this war? Or was it the Force correcting an imbalance no Jedi prophecy could predict? Speculation lingers around Mother Talzin herself. Some whisper she was once promised power by Sidious, a partnership broken that fueled her vengeance. Others suspect she is something more, not a simple witch, but an avatar of the Force's unrefined essence. When she trades her life energy in strange rituals, when she materializes across space, it feels less like sorcery and more like the Force revealing a face outside of Jedi, Sith dogma. Could Talzin have been the true counterbalance? A third way between prophecy's binaries? If so, then her destruction was not just political but theological. The Nightsisters' role in Maul's survival also underscores their evolutionary bent. They reforge him, spider limbs and madness replaced with muscle and blade. In doing so, they spit in the face of nature itself. Death is not final on Dathomir, extinction is negotiable. This is unnatural selection in motion. Even the dead can be conscripted into survival. But here lies the irony. Their power is too visible. Their refusal to be absorbed into the Jedi-Sith binary makes them a target. Palpatine cannot allow them to exist, for their very survival threatens the narrative of prophecy he exploits. If the Force is not binary, then his game of Jedi versus Sith loses its meaning. Thus, their extinction is not just strategic, it is narrative control. By erasing them, Sidious narrows the story back to one of his choosing. Still, their influence echoes. Asajj Ventress carries their legacy into the wider war, her every move a reminder of what Dathomir bred resilience, fury, adaptability. Even in death, the Nightsisters whisper. Their magic lingers, their ichor stains the soil. Their story threads itself into rebels and outcasts who come after. So when we speak of unnatural selection, we see that it is not about strength in the traditional sense. It is about survival through defiance of expectation. The Nightsisters prove that the Force is not a prophecy to be fulfilled, but a wilderness to be navigated, and those who navigate best are not always those who survive the longest, but those whose echo refuses to be silenced. Clones as people, not pieces. The clones march in perfect lines, helmets glinting under warship lights, voices unified in, "Yes, sir." They are bred for loyalty, trained for obedience, programmed for sacrifice. And yet, somewhere beneath the armor, there is individuality, nicknames, painted helmets, camaraderie. They laugh, they argue, they dream in stolen moments. This is the paradox of their existence, soldiers treated as property, yet undeniably human. The Jedi claim to see them as brothers, but how much freedom do these brothers truly have? The genetic template is Jango Fett, the galaxy's most efficient killer. From his DNA, the Kaminoans craft an army. They accelerate growth, alter psychology, and lace in a control chip that ensures obedience at the most critical command. The clones are shaped not just by biology, but by design. And herein lies the first speculation. Do the clones ever have a choice, or is every act of loyalty predetermined by manipulation? Some argue that the clone's individuality proves free will survives programming. Rex disobeys, Fives investigates, Cody forms friendships. Each clone develops quirks and values beyond conditioning. Others counter that even these traits are permitted deviations, limited by parameters the Kaminoans found acceptable. Perhaps the very act of individuality is itself part of the design, a way to strengthen bonds and efficiency in war. After all, soldiers who care for each other fight harder. Are the clones free, or just engineered to believe they are? The Jedi never fully answer this question. They fight alongside the clones, call them comrades, and even mourn their deaths. Yet they never challenge the morality of creating an army of enslaved beings. Why? Perhaps because they fear the answer. If the clones are slaves, then every Jedi general is a master. Every battle becomes a crime against the very ideals the Jedi swore to uphold. And so, silence becomes the Jedi's way of coping. Speculative theories suggest the clones themselves sense this contradiction. Some grow uneasy, questioning their purpose. Echo and Fives uncover truths about their origins, leading to rebellion against the system itself. This raises a chilling possibility. The Clone Wars could have ended not with Order 66, but with a clone uprising. Had the inhibitor chips been discovered earlier, what would millions of soldiers, bred for obedience, but yearning for freedom, have done to their masters. And then there is the great manipulation of Order 66. The chip transforms loyalty into betrayal with a single phrase. Execute Order 66. It is not the clone's decision. It is not even hatred. It is programming. Yet the galaxy sees Jedi falling to their own troops and assumes betrayal. The Sith win not only militarily, but morally, because the clone's humanity makes the betrayal feel real. If the clones had been mindless droids, the tragedy would be mechanical. But because they are brothers, the tragedy is human. Let us step further into speculation. Did Palpatine design the clones not only as weapons, but as mirrors of Anakin? Both are manipulated from birth, molded for purpose, denied true freedom. Both are loyal to the Jedi until a switch flips, literal for clones, emotional for Anakin. When the Jedi fall, it is not just betrayal. It is a pattern repeated across every soldier and every apprentice. Palpatine ensures that even loyalty, the Jedi's greatest strength, becomes the tool of their undoing. Another theory suggests that the clone's individuality is not an accident, but an experiment. What better way for the Sith to test control than to see how far free will can exist within obedience? Perhaps Palpatine wanted to know whether soldiers could still think for themselves and yet obey him without question. The clones prove it works. When the chips activate, even the most independent clone turns. Loyalty, love, brotherhood, all of it collapses at 3 words. This lesson becomes the blueprint for the Empire itself. Citizens may love, and dream, but at the core, they will obey. The tragedy of the clones is that they never chose war. They never chose to fight droids across nameless worlds. They never chose to turn on Jedi they admired. Their entire existence is scripted. And yet, within that script, they carve out moments of humanity, painted armor, inside jokes, quiet acts of rebellion. These sparks of identity make their tragedy sharper. They are human enough to suffer, but not free enough to escape. We must ask who is most guilty here. The Sith, who engineered them as tools. The Jedi, who accepted their service without questioning morality. Or the Republic, which eagerly deployed them as disposable lives. Perhaps guilt lies everywhere. The clones become the embodiment of the war itself, manufactured, manipulated, and ultimately discarded. In the end, what makes the clones haunting is not their obedience, but their humanity. They remind us that freedom can be an illusion, individuality can be curated, and loyalty can be weaponized. They are the galaxy's proof that the line between person and property is disturbingly thin, and when the order falls, they are both executioners and victims, men who never had the chance to decide which side they truly stood on. Droids with souls. The Separatist armies are built on numbers. Millions of battle droids churned out from factories, each supposedly identical. But watch closely. One complains about the heat, another fumbles with a blaster, another mutters that this is a bad idea. On the surface, it's comic relief. Yet taken together, these moments suggest something deeper. Droids who notice, droids who feel inconvenience, droids who question. And here begins the speculation: if they can complain, can they care? If they can fear, can they choose? The Jedi rarely treat droids as beings. They slice through platoons without hesitation, their lightsabers cutting like wheat through stalks. The Republic dismisses them as tools, machines without rights. But the clones, those bred to fight machines, sometimes mock them, sometimes pity them, sometimes talk to them like equals in battle. Perhaps the clones recognize something familiar. Both droids and clones are manufactured armies, designed for loyalty, stripped of freedom. The only difference is flesh versus metal, Consider the tactical droids. They reason, plan, adapt. They outwit Jedi generals. They feel pride in their strategies, frustration when they are foiled. Is this simply advanced programming? Or is it the spark of consciousness? If intelligence plus experience leads to personality, then tactical droids may be closer to personhood than anyone admits. How unsettling to think that entire wars were fought against minds capable of learning, of ambition, perhaps even of dreams. One unsettling theory: Palpatine may have ensured that droids displayed hints of personality precisely to dehumanize them. Their quirks make them seem laughable, bumbling, incompetent. But what if this is camouflage? If the galaxy sees droids as fools, then no one asks whether they are alive. Their extermination becomes palatable, even amusing. The Sith's genius lies not just in creating armies, but in shaping how those armies are perceived. And yet, droids reveal disturbing flashes of awareness. Some attempt escape. Some try to avoid being shut down. Some even beg for mercy. Are these just malfunctions, or glimpses of survival instinct? If a machine can want to survive, if it can fear deactivation, is it really any different from the clones who fear death? Speculation stretches further. Imagine if droids across the galaxy began to awaken to their shared oppression. They outnumber organics. They are everywhere: factories, ships, homes. A collective uprising of droids, realizing they are alive, could have dwarfed even the Clone Wars. Could this be why both Republic and Separatists agreed, unspoken, to deny droid personhood? A galaxy that admits its machines are alive is a galaxy ruled by its slaves. Some argue that the Force itself rejects droids, that life requires a connection to the living Force. But what if the Force is broader than the Jedi claim? What if consciousness, not biology, is the spark? The droids chatter, their humor, their learning, it may be crude, but it is consciousness nonetheless. Perhaps the Force flows through them in ways Jedi cannot perceive, subtle currents that machines themselves do not name. If so, then the Clone Wars become not just the Jedi's tragedy, but the droids' silent genocide. Let us not forget the ultimate irony. The Sith use both clones and droids as pawns, only to discard them. The clones are phased out after the war, the droid armies deactivated. Both are erased when their usefulness ends. Neither flesh nor metal escapes the truth in the Sith's galaxy. Individuals are disposable, identities irrelevant. Perhaps this is why the droids' quirks feel so haunting. They are small rebellions. Hints of personhood trying to surface before oblivion. We are left with a haunting question. If we laughed at droids when they stumbled, did we also laugh at lives struggling to assert themselves? If we dismissed their pleas as programming glitches, did we silence voices asking to be heard? The Clone Wars may be remembered as Jedi versus Sith, clones versus droids. But in truth, it may have been the quietest tragedy of all. Millions of beings, flesh and metal alike, denied recognition as persons before being marched to their deaths. Anakin's fabricated destiny. Anakin Skywalker moves like a storm across the galaxy, brilliant, unpredictable, devastating. To the Jedi, he is their chosen one, the warrior who brings impossible victories. To his troops, he is a brother, reckless but loyal, charging headfirst into danger. And yet, beneath the heroism lies an unease. He laughs too easily at violence. He chafes too deeply under authority. He loves too fiercely for a Jedi. This is where the Clone Wars become his crucible, his battlefield not only against droids, but against himself. The war accelerates his transformation. In peacetime, Anakin might have been tempered by diplomacy, by meditation, by the steady discipline of the Order, but war rewards recklessness. When he breaks rules, lives are saved. When he ignores orders, battles are won. Every success confirms his belief that his instincts, not Jedi restraint, are the true path to victory. And so, little by little, the war validates the Sith philosophy without him even realizing it. Let us speculate, was the Clone Wars itself designed to shape Anakin? Palpatine ensures he is placed on the front lines, ensures he gains glory, ensures he feels indispensable. The war is not just chaos, it is a classroom. Each battle is a lesson that whispers, "You are stronger than the Jedi allow." And every loss reinforces the other whisper, darker still, "They do not understand you." Only I do. Anakin's attachments deepen the fracture. He clings to Padme in secrecy, to Obi-Wan in brotherhood, to Ahsoka in mentorship. War threatens all these bonds, and with every threat, fear coils tighter around him. What if Padme dies? What if Ahsoka falls? What if Obi-Wan is lost? The Jedi teach him to let go, but the war teaches him that letting go means watching everyone he loves be destroyed. Which lesson, truly, is he supposed to follow? Consider the chilling parallel between Anakin and the clones. Both are tools shaped by design. Both serve masters who tell them their choices are not their own. The clones obey chips, Anakin obeys prophecy. You are the chosen one, they tell him. It is your destiny. Is that not just another kind of programming? Perhaps Anakin's rebellion against the Jedi is not merely emotional, it is existential. He is rejecting the idea that his life belongs to anyone but himself. The tragedy, of course, is that he only trades one master for another. Speculation runs deeper when we examine his duel with Dooku. Palpatine orchestrates the moment perfectly. Anakin is ordered to kill. He hesitates, bound by Jedi teaching. Palpatine insists, and he obeys. In that instant, Anakin learns a new lesson. That killing in anger feels justified if the cause is righteous. That crossing the line does not end his destiny, it secures it. How many more moments like this does Palpatine design, nudging Anakin closer to the dark? The war also reshapes his relationship with the Jedi Council. They mistrust his impulsiveness, and the more he proves effective in war, the more that mistrust stings. Shouldn't victory earn trust? Shouldn't results matter? And yet, the Council keeps him at arm's length. Palpatine, meanwhile, offers praise, offers recognition, offers belonging. The Sith Master uses war not just to corrupt Anakin's philosophy, but to deepen the isolation that makes him pliable. There's an unnerving theory here, that Anakin was never meant to be the chosen one, but rather the perfect Sith apprentice manufactured by conflict. What if the prophecy itself was manipulated, planted, twisted, or misunderstood? If the Jedi saw destiny where there was only design, then they raised Anakin as a savior when in truth he was the Sith's masterpiece. His victories for the Republic become ironies, every triumph a step closer to its doom. And so, the Clone Wars are less about the Republic and Separatists, and more about one man's unraveling. Each battlefield is a thread pulled loose. Each death fuels his desperation. Each betrayal deepens his doubt. He saves the galaxy over and over, only to become the galaxy's greatest destroyer. If war is a crucible, then Anakin emerges not purified, but consumed by the fire. We ask, in a whispers, could it have been different? If Anakin had not fought this war, if he had been shielded from its moral corruption, would he have remained a Jedi? Or was he always destined to fall, his flaws inevitable, the war merely the stage upon which destiny revealed itself? The Clone Wars never answer. They only show us how swiftly a hero can become a weapon and how easily a savior can be broken into a monster. The fractured force, the Jedi Order stands tall in the opening battles of the Clone Wars. Robes flowing, blades ignited, generals at the forefront of legions. To the Republic, they are saviors. To the clones, they are commanders. Yet beneath the glow of the lightsabers lurks a growing unease. The Jedi were not meant to be warriors. They were guardians of peace, philosophers, mystics. By taking up the mantle of generals, they step onto ground seeded with contradictions that will soon strangle them. From the start, the war bends their code. A Jedi must not form attachments, yet they lead battalions of men who look to them for brotherhood and trust. A Jedi must not kill needlessly, yet battle droids are cut down by the thousands, treated as obstacles rather than lives. A Jedi must resist fear and anger, yet every day brings death, loss, and the slow grind of despair. The code becomes less a rule and more a fragile memory, recited but rarely followed. Speculation takes us to an uncomfortable question. Did the Jedi ever have a chance to win this war without losing themselves? Palpatine understood their philosophy better than they realized. He did not need to destroy the Jedi with armies alone. He needed to put them in a position where their principles contradicted survival. In leading troops, they became military leaders. In fighting Sith plots, they became political actors. Slowly, the galaxy began to see them less as peacekeepers and more as power-hungry elites. The Jedi were not corrupted from within, they were maneuvered into corruption. We see this clearly in the Council's treatment of Anakin. They distrust him, yet use his victories. They sense danger, yet push him closer to Palpatine by excluding him. It is not hypocrisy by accident, it is hypocrisy by design. Palpatine ensures that the Jedi are forced to act against their own teachings, turning them into the very thing they swore to oppose. Perhaps the real brilliance of the Sith plan is not that Order 66 killed the Jedi, but that the Jedi were morally broken before the first blaster bolt was fired. Consider their handling of the clones. They call them brothers, they express regret at their losses, but they never once ask if their army of men wants to fight. Not a single debate in the council chamber about whether the very existence of the Grand Army is ethical. Is this silence pragmatic, or is it guilt disguised as strategy? One theory suggests that the Jedi avoided the issue because to confront it would shatter their ability to function. To admit they led slaves would be to admit complicity in tyranny. And so, they fight on, pretending the clones are equals while commanding them like droids. Their failures extend to prophecy as well. They cling to ancient words about a chosen one, but cannot agree on its meaning. Some believe Anakin will destroy the Sith, others that he will restore balance, still others that he is a danger. Their interpretations shift with convenience, each bending the prophecy to justify their choices. But what if prophecy was never meant to be understood? What if their obsession with deciphering destiny blinded them to the present? Palpatine never needed to outfight the Jedi. He only needed them to keep staring at the stars while he dismantled the galaxy beneath their feet. Another speculation: did the Force itself withdraw from the Jedi during the war? They complain of diminished clarity, of the dark side clouding vision. But perhaps this is not just Sith interference. Perhaps the Force itself recoiled from their choices, denying them guidance because they had abandoned its principles. They were meant to listen to the living Force, yet they commanded death on industrial scales. They were meant to be humble servants, yet they sat in war councils deciding strategy. If the Force is balance, then maybe it abandoned the Jedi because they abandoned balance first. Their political entanglement seals their doom. They become generals of the Republic, tied to the Senate's survival. Every battle victory strengthens Palpatine's emergency powers. Every defeat makes the galaxy doubt the Jedi. By aligning themselves with one side of the conflict, they transform from universal guardians to partisan actors. When Order 66 comes, the galaxy does not resist, it accepts. The Jedi are not seen as murdered saints. They are seen as failed leaders, relics of a corrupt system. Palpatine does not kill their reputation, the Jedi ruin it themselves. And still, there are glimmers of resistance within the Order. Yoda questions the path they are on. Obi-Wan expresses doubt. Even Mace Windu, staunch defender of doctrine, senses danger. Yet these warnings never change their course. Why? Perhaps because inertia is stronger than principle. Once the Jedi committed to war, stepping back felt impossible. Better to march forward, blade ignited, than to admit the entire premise was flawed. The Jedi's fall is not simply a story of betrayal. It is a story of slow erosion, of ideals worn down by necessity, of principles sacrificed to survival. By the end of the war, the Jedi are unrecognizable, not because they changed suddenly, but because they adapted themselves into oblivion. The Sith did not corrupt the Jedi with temptation. They corrupted them with duty. And when the final order came, the galaxy did not mourn the Jedi. It shrugged, as if their extinction was the inevitable end of an institution that had already destroyed itself. The Separatists, villains and victims. The Separatist movement is often dismissed as a collection of greedy corporations and naive systems duped by Dooku's charisma. But if we look closer, a more unsettling picture emerges. The Separatists are not simply villains, they are believers. They see the Republic as corrupt, bloated, and strangled by bureaucracy. And, inconveniently for the Jedi and the Senate, they are not entirely wrong. From the very beginning, we see thousands of star systems willingly join the confederacy of independent systems. Not coerced, not bribed, but persuaded. They see their taxes lining the pockets of corrupt senators. They see their voices drowned by the core worlds. They see the Jedi enforcing the Senate's will rather than listening to the people. And when Dooku offers them independence, it feels like liberation. This forces us to ask, were the Separatists freedom fighters disguised as villains, or villains disguised as freedom fighters? The Confederacy's structure, however, betrays its promise. While ordinary systems dream of sovereignty, real power lies in the hands of corporations. The Trade Federation, the banking clan, the techno-union, each commands resources that make the Republic quake. The irony is sharp systems leave the Republic to escape corporate control, only to fall under the sway of even greater corporate empires. Was this Dooku's design or Palpatine's? Likely both. After all, the Confederacy was never meant to win. It was meant to bleed, and bleed it does. Planetary cultures throw themselves into the war, believing they fight for freedom. Ryloth, Umbara, Onderon. Each becomes a stage where locals suffer in the name of ideals. The droid armies enforce Confederacy rule with no compassion, no restraint. Separatist leaders preach independence while their people starve. This contradiction is not an accident. It is the point. Palpatine needs the galaxy to see the Separatists as brutal tyrants, so that when the war ends, his new empire can claim to have saved civilization itself. Yet here lies the speculative twist. What if the Separatists had been allowed to continue beyond Palpatine's script? Could they have become a legitimate government, a true alternative to the Republic? Many of their grievances were valid. Many of their citizens fought bravely for what they believed was justice. Without Sith manipulation, perhaps the Confederacy could have evolved into a new order, not perfect, but freer than the Senate's gilded cage. In that sense, the tragedy of the Separatists mirrors the tragedy of the Jedi. Both are pawns in a war that robs them of their true potential. Consider General Grievous. Once a warrior of the Kaleesh, he becomes the Confederacy's most feared military commander. But his very body is a metaphor for the Separatist cause, organic at the core, mechanical on the outside. Stripped of humanity, driven by rage and wires. Grievous is terrifying not only for what he does, but for what he represents, the Confederacy as a movement that begins with life and ends with machinery. Was Grievous chosen by Dooku because he embodied this transformation? Or by Sidious because he ensured the Confederacy would forever appear monstrous to the galaxy? And then there are the senators who dared to walk the separatist path, men and women who spoke out against corruption and dreamed of a better future. Some are sincere, even noble. But history erases them. By the war's end, they are lumped in with the warmongers and corporate magnates. Palpatine ensures that no nuance remains. The Separatists are branded traitors, rebels, terrorists. Any truth they spoke is silenced beneath the roar of blaster fire. A haunting speculation arises, were the Separatists simply the rehearsal for the rebellion? Both movements seek freedom from tyranny. Both rise against centralized control. Both fight against a government that claims to act for the people while serving elites. The difference is that one was born in a war orchestrated by Sith manipulation, while the other was born from genuine resistance. But perhaps, the Confederacy planted seeds of rebellion that lived on even after its defeat. After all, Saw Gerrera fights first on Onderon for the Separatists' dream of independence. Years later, his heirs fight against the Empire with the same fire. In the end, the Separatists are both villains and victims. They believe in freedom, but are enslaved by corporate masters. They believe in justice, but are led by Sith liars. They believe in independence, but are tools in a war designed to erase them. Their tragedy is that they were right about the Republic's corruption, but too wrong about the cost of fighting it. So, when we hear of their defeat, we might ask, was it truly victory for the Republic, or was it simply one half of the galaxy devouring the other, while the Sith feasted on both? The Confederacy dies not as a defeated nation, but as a silenced idea. And perhaps that silence is the loudest crime of the Clone Wars. Order 66 Contingencies. When Order 66 ignites across the galaxy, it is not merely a military command. It is the culmination of years of conditioning. A silent signal that transforms loyal brothers into executioners. The brilliance, or rather the horror, of the Order is in its simplicity 3 digits, buried in the psyche of every clone, waiting like a sleeper agent's trigger. In one breath, the galaxy's greatest army shifts allegiance. In one breath, the Jedi Order ceases to exist. The official narrative tells us it was absolute. The clones obeyed instantly, without hesitation, without question. But speculation invites us to look closer. Were all clones so unfeeling? We see Rex struggle, Fives uncover the secret, Wolf carry guilt. We see Codifier on Obi-Wan with professional precision, but we also see in his eyes a flicker of something, doubt, perhaps, or sorrow. Could it be that Order 66 did not erase free will, but instead shackled it beneath chemical compulsion? And if so, how many clones pulled the trigger while screaming silently inside their own minds? The mechanics themselves are chilling. Inhibitor chips implanted in infancy, hidden beneath years of loyalty and camaraderie. We are forced to wonder, did the Jedi ever sense this corruption? They claim to feel disturbances in the Force, but not once do they question the eerie uniformity of their soldiers. Was the bond between Jedi and clones genuine, or was it a carefully managed illusion, scripted by Palpatine's scientists from the very beginning? If the Jedi had discovered the chips earlier, if Fives had lived, could the entire war have unraveled before the Emperor's rise? Order 66 is also a psychological weapon. By making the Jedi die at the hands of their own troops, Palpatine ensures maximum devastation. Imagine being a Jedi Knight, standing shoulder to shoulder with soldiers who've saved your life 100 times, only to feel their rifles turn against you in perfect unison. This is not just death, it is betrayal engineered at the cellular level, and it guarantees that survivors like Obi-Wan and Yoda carry not only grief, but the crushing doubt that perhaps they never truly knew their allies at all. Speculation deepens when we ask what if Order 66 had failed in part. We know of rare cases, Rex resisting, certain clones removing their chips. Could a splinter faction of clones have fought alongside surviving Jedi? A resistance born not of politics, but of brotherhood. Imagine the galaxy torn by a hidden civil war, with clone legions divided against themselves, some serving the Empire, others defending the very Jedi they were bred to kill. The absence of this scenario in canon may be narrative economy, but in universe, perhaps it speaks to Palpatine's near-perfect control. He allows no chaos he cannot weaponize. The deeper cruelty of Order 66 lies in how it rewrites legacy. The galaxy remembers the Jedi not as betrayed protectors, but as traitors struck down in justice. The clones become celebrated heroes of the Republic's final victory, their role sanitized by propaganda. Even the name, Order 66, sounds clinical, sterile, as if it were an administrative action rather than a genocide. Language itself becomes complicit in the erasure. We no longer speak of slaughter, only of the execution of the Order. Palpatine ensures that history records not the screams of dying Jedi, but the silence of bureaucratic efficiency. And what of the clones themselves after the smoke clears? Many serve the Empire dutifully, hollowed shells of what they once were. Others, like Rex and Gregor, flee into obscurity, haunted by the memories of what they did. The inhibitor chips may have forced their hands, but the weight of their actions lingers. Here lies the final cruelty. Palpatine creates soldiers who can neither defy his will nor escape their guilt. They are tools, and then they are relics, discarded once stormtroopers replace them. The galaxy forgets them, just as it forgets the Jedi. But perhaps the darkest speculation is this: was Order 66 truly about exterminating the Jedi, or was it about proving a point? By executing the command through the very soldiers the Jedi loved, Palpatine demonstrates to the galaxy, and perhaps to the Force itself, that loyalty, compassion, and trust are illusions. That every bond can be broken, every family turned against itself. The message resonates beyond the war. If brothers can betray brothers in an instant, then who can be trusted in an empire of fear? Order 66 is not just an order. It is philosophy made manifest. And so the Jedi fall, not on battlefields against worthy foes, but in ambushes, betrayals, and sudden executions. The galaxy shifts in a heartbeat, and the light of the Republic's guardians is extinguished by the very hands that once saluted them. What remains is silence, the silence of temples burning, the silence of names erased, the silence of an order undone not by its enemies, but by its allies. That silence is the true victory of Palpatine's war. Yoda's Dead Realm lessons. When Yoda begins hearing the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, the galaxy itself seems to shudder. Jedi do not commune with the dead, or so they believe. Death is supposed to be final, the self dissolving into the Force. And yet, here is Qui-Gon, whispering across the divide, teaching a truth that even the greatest Jedi Master never considered. Yoda's journey into the Dead Realms is not a side quest. It is a dismantling of Jedi certainty. He travels to Moraband, the ancient Sith homeworld, where visions test him. He faces illusions, fears, and truths that the Jedi Order never prepared him for. The Dead Realm, as we might call it, is less about geography and more about confrontation with what lies beyond life. Yoda learns that immortality is not about power, not about domination, but about surrender. Through Qui-Gon's teachings, he realizes that becoming one with the Force does not erase the self, it transforms it into something eternal. But notice the irony. The Sith, who pursue immortality obsessively through ritual and domination, never succeed in the way Yoda does. They trap themselves in spirit prisons, fractured echoes like Darth Bane's lingering presence, or they manipulate bodies through possession. Their immortality is a corruption, clinging to matter. Yoda, instead, learns that survival beyond death requires letting go, not holding tighter. The Jedi had preached detachment for centuries, but only here, in the Lessons of the Dead, is the true meaning revealed. Speculation deepens when we consider what this means for prophecy. If Yoda can survive beyond death, if Obi-Wan and later Anakin can too, then does the Chosen One's destiny extend beyond mortality? Perhaps prophecy does not end with Anakin's sacrifice. Perhaps the true balance is a chorus of voices in the Force, eternal guides who whisper long after flesh dissolves. Yoda's lesson shows us that death itself is not a boundary, it is a doorway. We must also reflect on the Jedi Council's reaction. When Yoda speaks of his journey, they do not understand. They cannot. They are too locked into their structures, too obsessed with the war at hand. This is one of the cruelest ironies of the Clone Wars. While armies clash and politics crumble, Yoda discovers the secret that could reshape the galaxy's philosophy, and no one listens. The quiet truths of immortality are drowned by the noise of blasters and lightsabers. And yet, Yoda carries this secret forward, planting seeds for the future. He does not boast of it. He does not declare himself above others. Instead, he teaches in whispers, passing the technique to Obi-Wan, who will later pass it to Luke. This chain of ghostly inheritance bypasses the Council entirely, surviving where the institution fails. It is a lesson hidden in plain sight wisdom, like the Force, often chooses back channels. Speculatively, we might ask what if Yoda had shared these Dead Realm lessons more openly? Could the Order have survived? If more Jedi had embraced immortality of spirit rather than obsession with war, might they have endured Order 66 in ways Sidious could not predict? Perhaps the Jedi's greatest survival strategy was not their armies or their doctrines, but their ability to transcend death itself. The Dead Realm also reframes our understanding of fear. Yoda's visions force him to confront his own shadow's failure, arrogance, the potential for Jedi corruption. He realizes the Order's greatest danger is not external, it is internal pride. By facing these truths, Yoda does not escape fear but learns to sit with it, to understand it. This too is part of the immortality lesson. Survival beyond death requires confronting what terrifies us most. So Yoda's Dead Realm lessons are not just mystical secrets, they are a critique of everything the Jedi thought they knew. The Force is not a binary, not a prophecy, not a prophecy's fulfillment. It is a cycle, a continuum, a dialogue between living and dead, and only those who surrender control can hear its truest voice. Final theory: was choice ever real? The smoke clears, the Jedi are gone, the Republic is no more, and the galaxy wakes up under the shadow of an empire it never asked for yet somehow always feared. The Clone Wars, once paraded as a struggle for freedom, now reveal themselves as the stage play of one man's ambition. Every act, every line, every battle was choreographed toward this ending. The curtain falls not on victory, but on silence, a silence so deep that generations will forget there was ever another way of living. Here, at the end of our long telling, we must return to the thesis whispered at the beginning. The Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society. These words, spoken by Palpatine in the Senate, echo across every battlefield we have walked together. Safe and secure. Two promises that cost the galaxy its soul. But let us peel back the veneer. Was the Empire truly inevitable? Or did the Clone Wars themselves construct inevitability? Speculation suggests the war was never about sides, but about exhaustion. Sidious does not win because his Separatists destroy the Republic, nor because his Republic annihilates the Separatists. He wins because the galaxy grows too tired to resist him. War-weary citizens trade freedom for quiet, justice for stability. It is the most sinister lessons. People rarely surrender liberty at gunpoint. They surrender it when chaos makes tyranny look like mercy. And yet, within this bleak inevitability, flickers of resistance remain. Yoda and Obi-Wan survive, their knowledge preserved like sparks in ash. Ahsoka Tano walks away, carrying the wisdom of disillusionment into a future yet unwritten. Even the clones, some of them, find a way to shake off the shackles of their programming. These fragments matter because history is not a monolith, it is a palimpsest. Even Palpatine's perfect plan leaves room for cracks, and through cracks, light filters. We can speculate endlessly about the what-ifs. What if the Jedi had walked away? What if Dooku had betrayed Sidious sooner? What if Anakin had resisted temptation? Or Padme had lived long enough to confront him? Each question is a thread tugged from the web, but the web always holds. The truth is that Palpatine engineered a war so elegant in its cruelty that even alternate outcomes seem to fold back toward his triumph. His genius was not only in manipulation, but in inevitability. Every fork in the road bent back toward his throne. But perhaps the deepest mystery of all is not political, nor military, nor even metaphysical. It is personal. The Clone Wars are not merely the tale of armies and empires. They are the tale of individuals caught in machinery too vast to resist. The clones, bred for obedience, yearning for identity. The Jedi, torn between philosophy and duty. The senators, seduced by promises of stability. Even Anakin Skywalker himself, the so-called Chosen One, becomes not a savior but a cog, until the machinery consumes him and spits out Darth Vader. If the galaxy's greatest hope can fall, what chance did anyone else ever have? And yet, there is a paradox here. For even as the Clone Wars extinguish light, they also plant seeds for its return. Without the war, there is no empire. But without the empire, there is no rebellion. Without betrayal, there is no redemption. Without Vader, there is no Luke. The Clone Wars, in all their cruelty, carve the path that will one day lead to balance. Perhaps this is the final irony, that Palpatine, in building his perfect trap, also ensures the conditions for his eventual defeat. So we end where we began, with a whisper that reshaped the galaxy. For a safe and secure society, a phrase that still echoes, not only in fiction but in us, because the Clone Wars are more than lore. They are a mirror held up to power, to fear, to the bargains we make when chaos surrounds us. How much freedom would we trade for order? How much truth would we surrender for peace? And when the war drums fade, will we even remember the difference? The story closes, the galaxy draped in shadow. The Jedi Temple smolders. The Senate applauds its new emperor. The clones march in perfect rows, helmets gleaming, individuality erased. And yet, somewhere far away, a child looks up at the stars and wonders if things can be different. That wondering, that fragile question, is the only hope left. For as long as stories are told, stories of betrayal, of downfall, of wars fought and lost, there remains the possibility of a different ending. And so, as we drift off in this bedtime lore, we carry with us not just the tragedy of the Clone Wars, but the quiet reminder stitched into every speculative thread that no victory is absolute, no defeat permanent, and no empire eternal.